the rise of the Indian craft aesthetic. Whether it's heavily embroidered tops being called Ibiza tops or chunky wooden bangles and big beaded necklaces, I'm seeing this trend in all mediums of apparel, jewelry, home decor, going back to some sort of traditional practice. And whereas this is a good thing, it can be a good thing, it can also lead to our crafts being reduced to merely an aesthetic rather than being characterized by the processes that they are made by. Welcome to episode 1 of my podcast. I'm so excited to be starting this, and it's definitely a long time coming after my Instagram's reels started going from 90 seconds to 4 minutes long. I'm playing with how to film this. For now, it's just being filmed on my laptop because the camera was too complicated to figure out. But today's episode and all these episodes really will be longer and sometimes even chattier and more casual versions of my reels. But they will be topic oriented and will involve some amount of research. I'm also hoping to have guests on, and eventually I do want to up the actual setting of this. Like right now it's very low budget, but I do want to invest a little more, get better equipment. But for now I'm just starting because you don't have to be perfect to start, you just have to start. And this is the first step. My first episode was actually going to be on Traitors, the TV show. I was going to get my best friend Iman on because she is the reality TV queen. But I got bored of the show and I forgot about my notes. But I have a lot of notes. So if you guys are interested in that topic, I can make a video on that next. It was like about the psychology behind reality TV. But yeah, I'm still figuring out this format. So if you guys have any suggestions, even just if you guys have any suggestions on topic, let me know. The comments are always open and ready. But today I'm going to be talking about a topic that I have soon become obsessed with over the last few years, and it's traditional crafts. First, we will discuss what exactly craft is, what are the ways we are reviving craft, some good examples, some bad examples, my favorite resources along the way that I've just noted, to study, to research, and of course to shop responsibly and ethically for crafts, and why I fear that the recent popularity of our crafts may actually have the potential of causing more harm than good. Oh, and my tea is cold already. Wow. Anyways, this is your sign to get yourself some hot tea or like some snack or some nashta, because we're going to be here for a while. But without further ado, let's get into it. I've been seeing so many references in current fashion and media to things that tie into some sort of tradition. In luxury fashion, we can take the Kolhapuri chappals on the Prada runway. We can see Bijoy Jain's Moksh Patam or snakes and ladders kind of, designed for the Louis Vuitton show. In TikTok trends, of course, we have the dupatta being called the Scandinavian scarf, or, heavily embroidered tops like Indian and South Asian wedding blouses being sold as Ibiza style tops, which is a conversation for another day, honestly. But today's conversation will revolve around only Indian brands and an Indian focused perspective, because I want to focus on how our crafts can be misrepresented within our country and misused even by us. Because before pointing fingers at the Pradas of the world, which is very warranted, I feel we should at least try and be responsible about our own crafts in our own country. Yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself. This is the problem, is that I get too impatient and I'm not used to the abundance of time that comes with a long form content piece like a podcast. I've tried filming this multiple times before and I just end up rambling. So I have a script this time. I've come prepared. But let's start with a brief intro about me and an icebreaker, since this is my first podcast episode. You can skip this if you just want to know purely about the topic, but I will feel bad because I'm telling you about myself. This is an icebreaker. Comment down below some facts about yourself so I get to know about you too. So, how did I get interested in Indian crafts? Basically, I was at Design University for 4 years, learning about all these case studies from the West, Western ideologies and whatnot. And whereas they were really fascinating, I knew the stuff that we had in India was equally as rich in design history, but maybe just undocumented or underrepresented in design history, in pedagogy, and in academia. Of course, it was also the fact that I was in the West. Like, I was studying in Vancouver. I was studying graphic design at Emily Carr in Vancouver. So I couldn't really expect my professors to teach me about this, right? So I went about trying to find research papers and such that could teach me about the deeper significance of the crafts of India. It was also around this time that I was doing my grad project, which is like your big project at the end final year of university, and my project was aimed at reconnecting with my Kutchi background through the crafts of the land and engaging with the culture through its art. In this process, I found out so much about the deeper significance behind our craft, its ability to tell stories, to capture history, and really be a tactile record of the past. Whether it's Rabari embroidery motifs showing us the changing lifestyles of the Rabaris, or the copper bells that show us how herders use different sounds to locate their cattle. I love deep diving into stories of all sort of objects and getting to know the lore behind them. So if that interests you, subscribe and let's talk about what is craft to begin with. So, to start with the basics, what is craft? Craft refers to the practice of making, often by hand, using skill, knowledge, and technique passed through time. In Hindi, it's called hastashilp, hast meaning hand, shilp meaning an art or a skill. And in India and in many other countries around the world, crafts are functional, decorative, and deeply tied to local culture. They are also inextricably connected to nature because they evolved from ancient times with locally sourced materials. Like, for example, Pattachitra painting was done with natural colors extracted from minerals and vegetables. Crafts are also linked to region, community, belief system, and they act as tangible records of these. For example, if we take Rabari embroidery, we can study the evolution of motifs and stitches and map the migration of the Rabari tribe through the subcontinent. In recent times, Rabari embroidery has started incorporating more modern motifs of bicycles and whatnot, so we can see how their mode of transport changes from being camels or just walking on foot to now cycles. But this way, craft is not just a product. It carries stories, rituals, and identity. The maker or the artisan's hand adds uniqueness to each piece, and so no two handmade pieces will be the same. Some interesting readings below, but in another essay, Judy Frater talks about how embroidery is like handwriting for the members of the Rabari communities. So maybe to us outsiders, it may all look the same, but within the community, embroidery holds individual identity as well. Next, and perhaps most importantly, crafts are the economic backbone of rural India. They provide employment and preserve cultural heritage. So, as an example, I have a story where I had gone to Kutch where I met a bunch of artisan women, like women from the Rabari community, and a lot of them would just tell me that their husbands either work and maybe earn an insufficient amount, or they get money from the government and end up spending it on daru, sharu, alcohol, and forget about their families and their responsibility towards their families. And you can read up about this online. So by craft, we see a lot of people from marginalized communities, but specifically women from rural India, get emancipated by being engaged in craft because this allows them a workaround. Because many families, for example, they may be very conservative and not open to allowing their women to go out and work. So by sitting at home and maybe by balancing work but also like housework but also being able to embroider from home, they can sell their work and earn money from this to then support their families and also have a mode of income for themselves. Next, let's talk about what we mean by a craft revival. I think first we need to talk about the definition of revival. Does revival mean preserving a dying craft in the traditional form that it has existed in? Or does revival mean recontextualizing the craft for today's modern world? Again, I feel like a broken record, but Judy Frater, I'm seeming like an obsessed fan of Judy Frater right now, but she, in one of her other essays, talks about how our artisans cannot be treated like tailors. We cannot tell them use this color, use that motif, That's not how you encourage or even give patronage to these traditional crafts, especially crafts that rely solely on these artisans and their creative genius and their ability to take forward this lineage or this heritage practice that has been passed down for generations. We cannot take that creative agency away from them, because then our artisans will become equivalent to just tailors, making custom outfits with a touch of the ethnic. And that's not what we want. There is, of course, a need to keep up with the times, and at the end of the day, the goal is always to help these artisans connect with a wider audience. And for that to happen, to some extent, they will have to modernize their silhouettes and stuff like that, but it cannot be a total pandering to the customer. We have to make efforts to give the artisan agency to create what they wish to and to foster a creative and independent mind of their own. But Kala Raksha Vidyalaya, which if I'm not mistaken has now become Somaya Kala Vidya, is doing amazing stuff with their design school for artisans. I think it's called Design Craft. I had interviewed Mubashira Khatri, who is an Ajrak artisan, the first woman artisan of Ajrakpur. I have a reel on it if you want to check it out. But she was telling me how she was never really interested in Ajrak, even though her family's been doing this for years. And only when she saw the ways you can experiment with it with the help of Design Craft did she get interested and start creating her very unique and individual work. She also went on to showcase this work at Lakme Fashion Week, which I highly recommend checking out her work. She's super cool. But I think this is a great example of revival, right? Where the artisan is given agency in their own right to combine these skills that have been passed down through generations in their family, but also have their unique voice and perspective to create something and then equip them with the tools of e-commerce and sales and marketing to promote their own work. Gone are the days where artisans and craftspeople are just the hands behind luxury or any sort of like traditional practice. And as Mubashira Khatri told me, she doesn't want to just export fabrics like her family has done. She wants to do B2B business. She wants to do B2C business, not B2B. She wants to make a brand of her own, and whatever she makes, she wants to have her name on those pieces, which rightfully so. Next, we can talk about why craft even needs a revival, right? As we've established, Indian crafts are not just decorative objects. They are living traditions that hold stories, skills, and cultural memory that is passed down through generations. But today, many of these crafts are at the risk of extinction. The main reason is that artisans are struggling to make a stable income from their work, and younger generations of artisan families are often leaving these traditions behind to look for other jobs, since they don't see any point in continuing this work when they can earn more in less labor intensive jobs. So without enough buyers and without proper support, these crafts are losing relevance and slowly fading away. This is exacerbated by fast fashion and mass-produced goods, because factory-made products are cheaper and faster to produce. So handmade crafts can't compete with their price or their scale. Additionally, these artisans also face the problem of the lack of market access. A lot of them are either old or unable to access e-commerce sites to showcase their work. And with the younger generation only shopping online, they are losing out on a lot of customers. They also face unfair pricing, because today's public would rather spend 5,000 rupees on a night out or on a fancy label than buy a good pair of sturdy choppers that is going to last them for years and is produced responsibly by skilled artisans. Artisans also face exploitation by middlemen. So all of these factors and more make craft work economically unsustainable for many of these families who have been practicing it for generations, who are now leaving these heritage practices to look for work in things that pay them better. As an example of this, we don't have to look any further than our Kolhapuri chappals that were on the Prada runway. These are handcrafted and made from vegetable tanned buffalo hide and braided leather, and they are a centuries old tradition rooted in rural Maharashtra and Karnataka. They were awarded the GI tag in 2019, and on paper their production supports over 10,000 artisan families, but many of these families barely earn 300 to 500 rupees per pair, while the middleman is reaping most of these profits. Additionally, mass market copies of the Kolhapuris, which I'll be honest, I myself have a few pairs of these, have flooded the market with cheaper copies taking away business from these artisans. So, as much as I love West Side Chappals, their Kolhapuris are probably not supporting the artisans at all. This is exactly why the revival of our craft is so important today. Indian crafts use natural and locally available materials and follow sustainable practices, which are qualities that the world is now looking for as consumers become more conscious of their purchases with the looming presence of fast fashion and its impact on the environment becoming more apparent. So, as people everywhere start valuing ethical products, Indian crafts have the potential to make a very strong comeback. They also provide livelihood in rural areas and support women artisans, which make them socially important as well. But as we touched on a little bit before, reviving crafts isn't just about preserving tradition. It's also about making them relevant for today's world. This means connecting artisans to markets, improving their digital access, and bringing design innovation so that traditional skills can create products for modern lifestyles. Government programs, GI tagging, and initiatives by organizations like Dastakar and Paramparik are very much helping, but I think so much more can be done. And now, here, instead of saying we need more organizations like Kala Raksha or Design Craft, which we definitely do, I would like to take this opportunity to turn the responsibility over to us as consumers. Because if we don't start becoming one, conscious of our purchasing power, and two, take responsibility to safeguard our crafts, nothing is going to change. Safeguarding our crafts from giants like Prada doesn't start and end with a reel on how they should give back to the artisans. But it happens when we start choosing craft over convenience. My aim of these videos is never to come on here and preach because let's be honest, I was buying fast fashion like 2 years ago, shopping from Shein. But it is because I have tried to make this radical shift and that it hasn't been that hard, just perhaps a little inconvenient, that I can sit here and say that yes, you too can do it. Because shopping for crafts, especially shopping responsibly, is not going to be convenient, especially not if compared to fast fashion. And as long as you go into it knowing that, I think it makes the process so much easier. So I'll give you a small example from my life. I have been moved into this room in my parents' office since the start of this year, in like around Jan-Feb when I first went freelance. And when I first moved in, I wanted to decorate it so badly and just fill it with aesthetic things because I wanted to make it cozy and I wanted to have a good setup for filming my videos and have a good background. But I also knew that I wanted to wait and fill it with crafts that meant something to me. I've considered many times going online and just buying a bunch of things and, hitting exit cart. But for some reason, I just felt like I don't mind waiting a little longer so that these craft fairs that I usually go to come back and I get the chance to go to them. So next week, actually in August, Paramparik Karigar is coming to Mumbai and I'm so excited because the last time I had gone last year, I remember they had a good amount of decor items. So I'm going to go and shop from specific stalls that I think are going to come this time. Is it a little inconvenient for me to wait for 5-6 months for these craft fairs to come? Yes, it is. But I think it just is an easy way for me to curb convenience and choose craft over convenience. That's such a good tagline, guys. Like, choose craft over convenience. But actually, it's not even inconvenient anymore to shop for crafts because there are so many brands and e-commerce stores or even NGOs that I think are doing amazing work. Okai is one. There's a shop near my office and I literally cannot go into Okai anymore because I will spend all my money. But they do amazing stuff with traditional embroidery pieces. Eki Beki is another store that I really like. I have their coasters over here. My tea is sitting on the other coaster. But yeah, Eki Beki also does amazing home decor stuff. I have their diaries as well. And I'm actually going to give my brother an Eki Beki Rakhi for Rakhi next week, which I think is such a cute Rakhi. I low-key want to wear it and keep it for myself. But I do still love going to craft fairs and talking to artisans directly one on one, they just end up telling me so many cool stories, and a lot of them are just so down and willing to chat. And I think they also like to see young people get interested in their craft. And I don't know, it's just a very special experience. I love going to craft fairs. It like makes my month. It's like all I can think about for months after. Now let's get into the meaty part of this episode, which is the rise of craft in popular culture and the danger this could potentially do to our crafts. I find that craft has become a buzzword in these fashion campaigns and in these luxury brands and in home decor, but I also think that the handmade aesthetic has become quite popular on Instagram. Recently, just yesterday actually, someone sent me a video of this influencer who started her own hair company, and she was selling these crochet headbands, specifically promoting them as handmade in the video. And this enraged the crocheting community, who all came out saying that this was very obviously machine made, and asking her why she couldn't just support a local small business who are actually crocheting by hand, and why she would purposely include the term handmade when it wasn't handmade. Now, I don't know how to tell handmade apart from machine crochet, but considering so many crochet businesses were coming out and saying that it was machine made, I believe them. I still haven't researched enough to form any concrete opinion on this, so I would have to really know my crocheting to tell. But what is clear from this incident is that the term handmade has become a buzzword that people are going out of their way to advertise it as. This obviously becomes problematic when the piece isn't actually handmade. Another blatant example of how craft practices are being harmed by the rise of this craft aesthetic is an incident concerning a small studio called Onus Studio, who you should definitely check out. I love their brand. I think they do amazing stuff. But recently they made a reel on how this kalamkari piece from their collection, which is so beautiful and obviously gained a lot of popularity, was copied by a bigger brand. But instead of actually being a kalamkari piece, which kalamkari is an ancient traditional textile art form, it was just machine printed and very similar to Onus Studio's design. So this is happening a lot, right? Like some textile inspired machine embroidery or print. And here is where my argument lies, that in the rise of this craft aesthetic, we are forgetting that craft is characterized by the processes that it is made by, that gives it not only its look but also its ability to carry on these traditional practices, and in doing so preserve these heritage practices. But I can go on and on about different examples of the danger of this, but I think most importantly it's good for us to pause and question why. Why is this craft aesthetic becoming so popular in this particular moment? Like, what is the consumer psychology that is pushing brands also to play into the sense of the traditional, even if they aren't actually supporting these traditional practices but just merely signaling them? I think with fast fashion being looked down upon and being seen as cheap, and just trends and following trends being seen as something done by those without a true fashion sense, things that add a flair of uniqueness and signal individuality of taste are becoming more popular. Everyone's talking about taste these days, and like, oh, now taste is going to matter and all that. It reminds me of like in the Regency era where taste was such a big deal. And that's okay as long as your taste isn't just a signaling of what you should care about but you actually don't, Because the thing is, supporting craft, as I touched on a little bit before, isn't convenient or cheap, especially not when compared to fast fashion. So people are preferring the look without committing to the actual act of preserving the craft. There is also, of course, the conversation of luxury brands playing into this aesthetic of the vernacular or the local, because a sense of tradition is now the new cultural capital. I have a reel on this on my Instagram. Check it out if you want to know more. But most importantly, I think this has a lot to do with the lack of awareness or the lack of education about the preservation of crafts and how to go about shopping for them responsibly. To be honest, I am also just learning as I go on how to actually shop for crafts responsibly. I can't say I'm perfect, but I'm a lot better than where I was 2 years ago, thinking that West Side selling machine made Rabari inspired embroidery is somehow going to actually help the Rabari women who sit and very painstakingly make these amazing, intricate designs. So, yes, I think there are some amazing brands out there, like the ones I've mentioned, that are making shopping ethically for crafts more convenient. But I think the onus is always on us as the consumers to read up, to do our own research, and to shop. The brands that I've mentioned thus far in the video, like Okai and Eki Veki, are some of my favorites, and I can make more videos on how much I love going to craft fairs like Paramparik. If you guys are interested, the one that's coming up, I can probably vlog that or film my experience of it. I also made a reel last week on my favorite resources to learn more about Indian art, design, and craft. So check it out if you want to know more. This is like so much shameless self-plugging of my Instagram, but I really like Instagram reels really are my favorite like short form content. Like it's just so much information can be packed in 90 seconds. It's crazy. Anyways, that's it for today's podcast, guys. I have so much more to say. I haven't even touched on the whole concept of, ethics and power dynamics within craft production. Like, who holds the power? Is it the consumer who is giving patronage to these crafts, or is it the artisan who is actually using their creative genius to make them? And how much of the artisan's choice is dependent on what is popular and what is selling? So yeah, I have a lot more thoughts, but I think for now we should stop it at this, because my voice is kind of hurting from talking so much, because I lost my voice a couple days ago. Not lost my voice, like I overexerted my voice. But yeah, that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. I have so many more ideas that I have in mind, but I don't know where to start. I'm quite overwhelmed with all my ideas. So if you guys have any ideas or any suggestions, let me know. Always like and subscribe and share this with anyone that you think would like this or just wants to learn more about craft. And I'm also learning. Like, I never want to come on here and preach and talk and say like I know everything. So I'm also very open to learning. So I also just again want to say I'm not perfect. Like, I mess up so many times. I realize after that, oh damn, that wasn't maybe the best choice or best like purchasing option. But I'm still learning and I'm still growing. So, no shame to anyone. I just think it's beautiful to have so many crafts of our country that we can support, and we can really make someone's day easier by choosing to buy from them than opting for convenience of a fast fashion. So yeah, I'm also really grateful that I can do this. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you very soon. Bye.